good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us from today. Hope everybody's having a fantastic Tuesday and week so far. Just to make sure that you guys can see and hear us, please find the chat and let us know where you are joining us from today. While you are doing that, let me just tell you guys that we have a really awesome webinar plan for you today, and we will be diving into that in just a couple of moments. But if this is the first time you're joining one of our digital events, welcome. We hold our webinars, roundtables, workshops, and onboarding days to share some insightful information with the SEO community and help you make the most of our tools and give you some actionable takeaways that will help you boost the traffic to your website. Today, we're going to talk about next-gen content optimization. Let me just quickly check the chat. I see that we have people from Ohio, Columbus, from the UK, from Pakistan, even Turkey. Great to have people joining from Israel. Awesome. So today's topic is going to be about next-gen content optimization. I'm going to be the host of today's event, and I'm part of the marketing team over at SEO Ranking, but obviously you're not here for me. We are here for Alex Wright, who is SEO specialist and content strategy guru and he's also the agency director at Clicky. Welcome. Happy to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here, Alex. Could you please say a couple of words about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, hi, everyone. My name's Alex, and like Andrew said, I'm the agency director at Clicky. So we're a UK-based agency. We specialise in search marketing, so SEO and PPC, and also wider paid media as well. So a bit about me. I've been in the industry for about a decade now. I started off in content writing and copywriting, and then I found out a little bit more about SEO. I fell in love with the technical elements of it as well, but content writing and copywriting is still quite dear to me. In terms of what I tend to work on, so I work with a lot of D2C brands at the moment, some heritage brands in the UK, and then some sort of wider lead gen brands as well, and then some e-com mixed in there. So yeah, quite a broad amount of experience at the moment. So at the moment I run Clicky as an agency, the day-to-day sort of side of things, and then also I have hands-on work with some select client accounts as well. So quite a mix for me.
Brilliant. Once again, happy to have you with us. Let me just say a couple of more things about SEO Ranking and the host of today's event. Basically, so we are a platform that is full of advanced and tools for SEO and digital marketing first steppers. And up on the screen, we have a lot of recognition from independent experts and users alike. And one of the biggest things is that we always look to our users to further develop our product, and we are happy the way it's going. Just to sort of back that up, that we have tools for like the advanced tools and tools for SEO newbies. Basically, we have everything for digital agencies, so you can experience the white label feature, so that there's no trace of SEO ranking, and with reporting. So when you're communicating with clients, it's just going to be only you and the power of your agency and the SEO data of SEO ranking that has no trace of SEO ranking actually. And also business owners are welcome to explore SEO ranking and take advantage of it, because we have a lot of information that will help you beat that learning curve and go from a starter to somebody who knows not a thing or two, but is advanced in SEO. And obviously, SEO freelancers have all the tools they need to cover any goals that they have. And through all of these tools that we created, we are lucky to be trusted by over 25,000 companies who are kind enough to entrust their business to us. So we are happy to keep this number growing. Yeah, and that is what I wanted to say about SEO ranking before we continue with our webinar today. And without further ado, I just want to say that if you have any questions, write them into the chat. We will do our best to answer them in the moment, or if not, we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the very end. This event is going to last about an hour, maybe an hour, 5-10 minutes tops. Yeah, and you will get an email that includes the presentation and the replay. So all you have to do now is just kick back, buckle up, and ask us questions that may be of interest to you. Yeah, so that is the intro. And without any further ado, I'm going to give Alex the floor, and I'm going to be also following the presentation just like you guys. Let's go.
Much. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to quite a lot of topics and quite a lot of concepts in this presentation. So I'm going to touch on quite a few different things. As Andrew said, we've got time for questions and things. So if you want to fire anything through, we'll do our best to answer those as we go along. But what I want to do is start with a bit of a step back in search. So at the moment, we're seeing a lot of fluctuations in search, but what I want to do is take us right back to how SERPs used to look. So this is a screenshot from a SERP taken over 10 years or 15 years ago, actually. And you can see it's quite basic in terms of what was actually available back then, in terms of the organic listings, at least. And then back in the day when this was sort of the SERP and this was the landscape, you might have heard a lot of people talk about what keywords to optimize for, or keywords that they're targeting in their specific types of content. And then you might have heard them start to say things like they're optimizing certain keywords, or they're optimizing for word count, for example, which was quite common back in the day, I think. And I think a lot of people still do talk about that sort of stuff. But it's, again, that sort of topic raised around that time. You might have even heard the words LSI keywords, slightly controversial. I didn't know whether to keep this in or not. And that this sort of term used for optimizing content. But that's a really quick whistle stop tour of where we used to be. So where are we now? How do we optimize content now, and how do we look at content, and how should we be thinking about our content and what we target when we're writing for our users? We should be thinking about things like user intent. So I mean, there's quite a lot of things that we'll touch on a little bit later in terms of what's happening right now in search, in terms of the content updates that we're seeing. But user intent has always been sort of something we should have focused on, and it's something that started to come out a little bit more, which is obviously a really good thing for the content writers, because it's an easier thing to optimize for a little bit more naturally, I guess, if you are more copywriting orientated. There's also semantic SEO to consider. So we're going to go through semantic SEO, some principles of that in a little bit more detail shortly. But this is kind of something that a lot of people are starting to move towards, or they have moved towards, and it's helped to optimize sites in sort of the current SERP landscape. And it's really important to sort of keep this in mind as I run through. And also entities. So I know there's been a couple of webinars for SE ranking previously that have mentioned entities. I know we've had Dixon Jones, who is very knowledgeable about entities on the webinars as well. So hopefully you're familiar with entities. But what we're going to do is actually start this presentation with those and a bit of a look into those. So we're going to be talking about how we can level up our content with entities, and how we can optimize our content a little bit further by thinking a little bit more about entities and a little bit less about keywords. So first things first, what is an entity? So I'm going to break it down really simply. It's a person, a place, or a thing. So really simple concept to wrap your head around, at least with this short description. But why should we care about them? Why should we think about entities more than keywords? Why should we think about those when we're optimizing our content? So the answer really centers around knowledge graphs. And I'm not sure how many people in the audience will be familiar with knowledge graphs. I'm hoping most people, but if you're not, here's a description taken from search. So it's a knowledge base that uses a graph structured data model or topology to integrate data, often used to store interlinked descriptions of entities, so things like objects, events, situations, or abstract concepts. And they also encode the semantics underlying the used terminology. It's a bit of a long-worded explanation, isn't it? It's quite complex, quite a lot of words in there, quite long sentences. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's simplify that. So Google and other search engines as well. So let's not forget there's more than just Google out there. They do have the market share, but there are still more. So they use knowledge graphs to store connections between entities. So they discover entities in search, and then they use knowledge graphs to start to build pictures of what those entities are, and the kind of relationships between different entities to try and create a bigger semantic picture in search. And they really try and understand those meanings behind the entities and how everything works together. And you can kind of see an example on this slide right now of how the Kinks as a band, for example, for anyone who's not familiar with them, they're a British band from many years ago. But this is how, for example, this is taken from Google's own knowledge graph in terms of this particular band. And what you can kind of see here are the connections between certain entities as well. So you've got the Kinks as a band. You've also got it connected to other entities, which are its band members. And then the band members also have different things and different bits of information about them. So this is a real live example. And this is a good example of Google taking one entity and connecting it to another, and storing those relationships, understanding the overall context. So what it really wants to, what Google's really trying to do here is understand, okay, if the Kinks are mentioned, you probably expect to see something like the band members mentioned as well in the same sort of content, or at least linked to from that particular mention. Which brings me quite nicely on to sort of some more concepts around, I guess, semantic SEO or entities and context around that, because this is an old quote by John Rupert Firth, which is, "You shall know a word by the company it keeps." So just moving slightly away from entities, we start to talk about things like the context of entities and how they differ based on the context of a sentence around them, which is something that search engines, particularly Google, are getting more clever with at the moment, and they have been over the last few years. So let me give you an example as to what I'm sort of trying to talk about here. So before I go on to a bit more of a description of entities, I wanted to talk about context windows as well and helping to understand entities in a little bit more detail. So for anyone that's not aware of a context window, essentially it's a specified range surrounding a certain word that's used to help to understand what that word is about. So for example, in this sentence that I've got here, I last saw him walking close to the bank. Now, some people might start to try and guess what bank that is. Obviously, in the English language, there's more than one type of bank. There's things like a river bank, and there is also something like a bank as an institution. So it's difficult to understand based on this sentence what that bank actually is. So a context window might start to look at the words before or after. So in this example, if they were looking at a context window of 3, they'd start to look at to the river bank or to the river before the word bank to understand what that actually is. And then similarly, if we didn't have those words before, but we had 3 words afterwards on example street, you'd know which bank that was. That's probably not going to be a river bank. That's going to be an actual bank. So what I'm trying to say really is when you're optimizing content, think bigger than just keywords and consider, those entities that are going to be in there and the relationships that will be between those entities, and start to get an idea of how to optimize based on that instead, and think less about those keywords. Like I said, also consider the context of a sentence. So if you're optimizing for an entity, make sure you really disambiguate as to what that entity actually is. Make sure that you're being really clear as to what that might be. I mean, a lot of models, natural language processing models now, are able to look at bigger pieces of text and understand the context of that to understand what entities are being referenced. But the more that you can do that, the more that you can offer that context within those context windows around the entities that you're mentioning, the easier it's going to be for search engines to understand, and the easier it's going to be for them to optimize for that. But you're probably now thinking, okay, that's a lot of information. That's a lot of new things that I haven't really considered. So where do I start? How do I actually start with this? And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, particularly on this webinar. But SE Ranking actually have a good solution for this, which is their content editor. So if you are a subscriber, or if you use SE Ranking on a regular basis, you might have already used this. If you haven't, then you probably should. But the SE Ranking content editor makes that optimization really, really, really simple. So you can do things like analyze competitor content. So you can put in a topic to the content editor, or a specific keyword you're trying to optimize towards. And then what it will do is go away, start to look at the SERP, start to look at who the competitors are and the kind of ways they've structured their content, which then will pull through things like the entities that they mention within their content. And then you can start to optimize for those specific entities within yours. So that's a really powerful thing to have, and it does it all for you. So I was talking about things like understanding entities and relationships between those in content. There's sort of some manual work to be done around that, but also SE Ranking can take away a lot of that manual work and help you to optimize really, really well for those. You can also create detailed briefs for your content writers. So if you're not a content writer, but you are an SEO and you don't do much content writing, you can actually turn all of this into a brief. So you can get SE Ranking to analyze the competitor content, work out what entities you need to be mentioning in your content and the relationships between those. And then you can wrap that all into a brief, send it to a content writer, and then they can edit that, and you can see that happening in real time as well. And it's easy to just share like a specific link to a content writer. They don't have to be part of the platform, but it's a really, really streamlined way of getting that really next level content really, really quickly. You can also work in Google Docs, which I quite like. I thought I'd mention that on this slide because I think it's easy to use the platform, but if you use Google Docs like I do, it's easy to just get the extension from SE Ranking as well and get that in Google Docs. Something that you can also do is analyze readability. So it kind of takes all the effort out of this content optimization, which is, like I said, really, really powerful and a really different way of looking at things than we have done previously. But then how do we optimize further using other tools that are available to us? So I want to talk a little bit about query counting. It's, again, something that probably isn't covered as much as I would hope in the industry. But query counting is essentially using search analytics for Sheets or using Google Search Console to understand what queries your pages are associated with. So query counting is essentially just exporting all of the queries that a page is associated with on a month-to-month basis, and you can start to look at what queries those are. After you've created your first batch of content with the content editor, you can then manage performance in Search Console and see if there's any other queries that you might be able to optimize for. So this is a screenshot taken from Search Analytics for Sheets. Like I said, it's a free extension, so you can export those queries by page at scale. Obviously, if you use the Search Console platform, you get 1,000 rows at a time. With this extension, you get 25,000. So if you are working with individual pages and filtering by individual pages, you probably won't need the entire 25,000, which means that you'll get all of the data. You might get a bit more than 1,000 as well. So you'll get a much more complete data set to use to optimize those pieces of content with. Again, you can spot opportunities, so you can start to see the opportunities there from keywords that are sort of starting to pop up for your content that maybe you've got impressions for but not clicks, so you can start to weave those in, and it can be a good indicator of performance as well. So if you start to see new queries associated with your pages month to month, then it's a good indicator of Google seeing your page is more relevant to a specific topic set. So it's an early indicator rather than you waiting for visibility and traffic. If you start to be associated with new queries, you know what you're doing is working, which is a really, really powerful thing. And it helps to sort of validate the efforts that you've put into content as well. But it involves more than what you just see on the page. So I talked a little bit about on-page optimization and giving you a bit of a whistle-stop tour there, but content optimization is way more than just optimizing for specific pages, which is where things like semantic SEO comes into it. So a bit of a definition here from Holistic SEO, who are quite well known for sort of pioneering semantic SEO, but it doesn't aim to answer a single question about a subject. It answers everything that a user might want to know around a specific topic, and then it presents that information in a really nice hierarchical structure. So what does that mean? Well, basically, it means that search engines will probably judge your relevance for an entity or a query with your coverage of related entities and topics in mind from that semantic perspective, which means it's all in the relationships. So let's break it down a little bit. We're going to go into the differences between entity SEO and semantic SEO and how they differ, and the kind of things that you might want to consider when you're optimizing content as well. So entity relationships, this is one taken for electric bicycle. So this is taken again from Google's knowledge graph. This is just a quick visual to show you the kind of entities that are related to that. So if there's content around electric bicycle, Google would expect to be seeing things like pedelecs mentioned, or motorized bicycle, or electric motor, or batteries. Everything, all of these things are closely related to electric bicycle as an entity. So when we're creating our content, it's a good idea to try and think about how you might be able to weave these in, or alternatively, if it doesn't quite fit into the content that you're writing, how do we link this over to another piece? So for example, for electric bikes, you might want to talk about, you might have another piece of content on electric bike motors, in which case you might link off to that from your electric bike content. So thinking about that from an entity perspective is how you connect those entities in your content and start to mimic those structures that you see in Google's knowledge graph. Now, when we start to move away from entity SEO and back into semantic SEO, we start to look at things like topical relationships. So I mentioned linking to other pieces of content just then, but for example, if you had a piece on electric bikes, there's quite a lot of content that you can create around that, and quite a lot of different things that people might be searching for. So you can kind of see again that the way that looks with electric bikes specifically. So you might have content pieces like how do electric bikes work, or electric bike maintenance, or electric bikes versus regular bikes, what's the difference there? Or even something like electric bike classes, because there are different types. So it's really sort of trying to amplify what you've got on that specific topic, and using related keywords to create new content to link back to the original one. So in practical terms, that means grouping entities together through mentions in content or internal linking. So making sure that, like I said, if you are mentioning one entity, you're understanding what that knowledge graph might look like for that specific entity and the relationships that has to other entities, and trying to group those together, whether it is mentions in the content, so whether it is overtly covering those related entities in the content where it's relevant, or internal linking off to another piece of content that is about one of those other entities as well. And really creating content that covers more than just that parent topic, and trying to expand sort of that window around that entity. But it comes with a lot of caveats as well, because it sounds fairly straightforward. It sounds fairly simple. Take an entity, mention related things in the content, link to other types of content or other articles that people might be interested in. It's fairly straightforward content strategy, but it can be done quite incorrectly. So I've got a couple of examples from clients that we've worked with, and then clients that we've inherited, and had to help to turn that around. So what you've seen in the top there is topical relevance built correctly. So massive increase in revenue from organic, and it's because we optimize for topics and entities around that specific base entity. and then help link all that together, and it improved visibility across that whole topic rather than it just being those individual pieces of content. It was really, really well thought out, the content strategy. But the bottom example is one that we inherited actually. So they were down by about 20% in revenue year on year, and the sort of reason behind that was that they tried to optimize using this method, but they've created really thin, really sort of irrelevant and really low value pages because they thought they were targeting everything around a specific topic. So there's nuance there, and it's really hard to nail down, but there is a really fine line as well. So if you are trying to optimize towards this, the magic really does lie within the execution. So it's making sure that you're not just creating really thin pages or things that you think are semi-related, and just trying to link those together for the sake of topic optimization or semantic SEO. So that execution has to be really, really tight to make sure that you do get the most out of it. So we've talked a lot about how you might appease search engines. So how does that kind of overlap with user centricity? Because like I said, a lot of the stuff that we're trying to talk about and trying to optimize towards now is user centric. So what I want to do now is talk to you about how that works in conjunction with this as well. So it's basically this simple. So by providing like detailed product or service information alongside that topical content, we can create a nice funnel of content that targets users at all stages of their journey, which is what is really important here. So the topical element of it is great, and the topical element actually links quite nicely into content that addresses a user at specific stages of their journey, which we'll go through in a second. But before I do, I thought I'd just bring up this stat because it's going to be really relevant for my next slide. So 82% of searchers choose a familiar brand for their first click in search. So for example, if someone's searching a really high intent keyword quite low down the funnel, they might look for somebody that is familiar to them to start off with, for their first click in search. So how can we build that familiarity straight away before they get to that lower funnel point? And this is kind of this next diagram for you. So what I've got here is a very basic buying journey for electric bikes. So most people might focus on buy electric bikes or the real low funnel purchase intent keywords because that's where the money is. That's where people want to see their ROI. A lot of people are going to focus there because it makes them money, really. In reality, a user just doesn't just jump onto search and buys an e-bike. They don't just search for electric bikes straight away. They research everything first. So that's where that building this topical relevancy really intersects the audience centricity. So by building those related pieces first, so things like what are electric bikes, so people start to become aware of what they are, why they might be useful to them, and then comparing them to things like, how are they different to regular bikes? What is the extra benefit for me? And then, maybe they're closer to a sale, but they're thinking, actually, how does this benefit me financially, or is this something I can offset financially? So they might look at things like running costs as well. But that's all before they even decide, actually, yeah, I do want to go ahead and buy an electric bike. And a lot of people will not focus on that. So this is where a lot of the opportunity is really upper funnel elements of content and those longer tail topically relevant keywords that a lot of people don't really focus on. So there's quite a lot there to be able to go at, which will then give people that familiarity for when they are searching for lower funnel terms. They might actually click on you because they're more likely with that familiarity. And then just a little piece as well on lifetime value. So this type of content can help you to build lifetime value as well, because you can do things like maintenance guides, for example, when somebody's bought a bike from you, and then they might continue to come back to you, and they might have further advocacy, and it might just help to foster that relationship between you and your customers, which then helps them to not just repeat purchase the same product, but purchase other products from you as well. So thinking about it from an e-com perspective, it's really powerful, just because you're thinking about a user not just from when they're buying from you, but from when they start to when they end. So yeah, being present at all stages of that user journey increases topical relevance, that brand recognition, and it can also land you some pretty impressive links as well. So this is something that probably isn't covered a lot, but this is actually how we build a lot of our links at Clicky. So we do elements of campaigns and PR, but something that we've got the most impact from is actually that upper funnel content. When it's done really, really well, it's user centric and it's really topic focused. So this is a screenshot you might recognize from in terms of the layout from SE Ranking, but this was from a piece of content that we wrote that was really long tail, really low search volume, highly related to the topic that we were trying to bring people in for, and highly related to one of our money terms, but just an informational piece of content. And it actually got naturally picked up by things like The Guardian and Go Compare, and then there's other sites in there as well, like LV, so some big insurers in the UK, really high authority sites that are just linking to this content because they're doing research around the topic, and then suddenly they find our content, and they decide, actually, that's a good resource for me to link to from my article that I'm writing. So it's a really natural way of getting links, and actually it doesn't take a lot of outreach either. We didn't outreach this particular piece at all, but all we started focusing on was, okay, what does that user journey look like? Where is the topical relevance going to be in terms of the terms, and how does that relate to our main entity, and built it from there. And then that just flowed quite nicely through. It got a lot of traction with users in terms of traffic, but then, like I said, it's got these really high authority links as well. So a bit of a different way of looking at link building, but very organic and very easy to do at scale as well. Because if you're already doing it for the content, you're going to get this sort of as a side benefit as well. So that's kind of how we look at things now, or how I would recommend looking at things now. So really focusing on the entities, the relationships between those entities and content, and then the related links to those as well. And then also how you cover topics from more than just the main entity, how you cover the questions and things around that as well. So that's kind of the now. But there's a lot of things coming next, right? So the US, if you're in the US, you're already experiencing some of this, but SERPs are going to change again soon, and they are changing quite frequently. And from what I can see, this is still being refined quite a lot. But generative AI is here in the US for a lot of queries. So it's completely AI driven. I'm assuming everyone is aware of how this works, but it uses quite a lot of sort of different things to enhance the search experience. So it provides a unique summary for some longer tail queries, for some more informational queries. There's sort of a more conversational mode to it as well. So it retains the context of the original search and allows you to add searches onto the top of that as well. And you can sort of see more things like frequently asked questions as well on these sorts of these results. So there's a lot of different things for us to be optimizing towards, and I'm going to go through how we would do that from a practical perspective right now. So there's a few things from looking at this that I've noticed. So practicalities wise, so generative AI is going to knit together various sources of information to answer those longer tail queries. So you could sort of see that 3-pack at the top. It's going to help you to build context as well. So users have got the ability to ask those follow-up questions, and AI is going to try and remember the original context and help you as well in terms of suggesting related content for users to continue that search journey as well. So there's a lot that AI is trying to do in terms of heavy lifting, but it's going to be using existing information to train itself and to be able to provide these SERPs and provide the users with certain pieces of information. But I actually think that there's something bigger at play here, and I think it's related to a patent that was filed in 2020 by Google. So Bill Slawski sort of covered these a little bit in an article a few years back. But it's about information gain scores. So this is a really nice description from Bill as well. So information gain scores indicate how much more information one source might bring to a person who's seen other sources on the same topic. So pages with higher information gain scores may be ranked higher than pages with lower information gain scores. So what I actually think is going on here with that 3-pack and the way that AI is starting to decide which pieces of content to show and which piece of content to use to knit together that answer are those information gain scores. And I think the reason is because it's the differentiation there. So it's not just going to give us 3 pieces of content that are exactly the same. It wants to bring in 3 pieces of content that cover the topic, but that add different pieces of value on top. So I've seen examples of this where a piece of content or a website has been featured in that 3-pack, and it's nowhere near the first page of search. It could be the second page or the third page, but because it adds something different on a specific topic related to a query, it is being pulled in because it's given that differentiation and it's given that information gain. So it's something that we don't know if information gain scores have been confirmed as being used in search, but based on what I'm seeing with the generative AI and based on what sort of it is where we're seeing is working from our testing, I do think that these are featuring at the moment. And I do think that when we start to optimize content or start to think about optimizing content, we should be thinking about information gain and how we add that extra value. So the tool that I mentioned from SE Ranking can help us to add all the entities we need, all the relationships we need, and then it's about, okay, once we're on a par with competitors in terms of entities and how we establish those relationships, it's then where's the information gain? How do we add the extra value? What's next for us? So it's thinking about that next step above the competitors. So really, really powerful way, I think, particularly as in terms of how search is going to optimize our content, and something that I don't see a lot of brands doing. I see a lot of people trying to mimic what's going on the top of search, but never looking for that extra bit of value. It's always what topics do our competitors cover, and then that's it. So yeah, I'd start thinking about this a lot more if you are in charge of optimizing content. But let's get a bit more technical as well. So we've talked quite a lot about the process of content writing, audiences being a bit more user-centric. But what I want to do is touch a little bit on technical, because there is something that has been around for a number of years. But I think it's going to be really important as we move to this new style of SERP as well, and that is schema markup. So again, people are probably massively aware of this. It's not new, and it's fairly well used across the industry, particularly certain types. But for anyone that isn't aware of it, so schema can help you to add context to the content that you have on your page, to structure any unstructured data. Something else that it can do that, I don't see a lot of people doing. I see a lot of people using basic schema, but they don't really use it to strengthen relationships between entities referenced in content. So there are attributes for schema like same as, and same as can be used to start to improve relationships between, or to state more relationships between entities that are mentioned in schema and other entities that might be housed somewhere else. So you might use it to tie together different instances of an entity. So, for example, if you've got a website, but you've also got a Facebook profile, or you've got other parts of the internet that you occupy with your brand, you can start to tie those together, which is quite a nice way to strengthen the relationships as well. But I don't really see schema used that much for that. And one thing that I can't emphasize enough, because I think this is one of the biggest missed opportunities for a lot of sites, is it's not just about rich snippets. Yes, schema can give us rich snippets. It can allow us to pull through product pricing and reviews and loads of different things through to search to make our search results look much more attractive, to improve click-through rate and improve real estate occupied in search. But it's not just for that. It's just because there's not a visual representation of your schema working in search doesn't mean that it's not working. What it's doing is helping you to structure the data that's on your page to add more context and to add further relationships. And whether you see that or not in search is kind of immaterial. It allows you to sort of strengthen those entity relationships, to strengthen that topical relevance on each page. So when you are using schema, I would really encourage people to go to the schema.org website and then start to have a look at all the schema types that are available there, and not just the things you might see in Search Console. So really start to look there and start to think, okay, what types of schema could I use on my site, on my templates that would be useful, and how can I get them implemented? And there's lots of different ways depending on the CMS or the type of site that you're using that you can do that. So this is kind of hierarchically how I'd see that all working. So you've got sort of at the bottom, I've got that semantic SEO and topical maps, and really making sure that once you've got an entity that you want to target or a topic that you want to target, that you really map out everything to do with that topic and exactly what you need to cover for a user. So think about things like longer tail search queries that you could be looking for. Again, if you look in SE ranking, there's a lot of different tools there you can use to discover questions and related keywords that you can start to use to build out your topical maps. There's also things like customer service data that you might be able to use for your brand. So if you get a lot of questions from your customers, from your clients, and things that you think you should be covering online, you can start to cover that in content and start to use that to build out your topical map as well, because it might not immediately be flagged in a keyword tool. It might be an emerging term, or it might be really, really low volume, but it might still be relevant to your topic, and it could be used to gauge the relevance of your site as a whole for a topic. So really powerful way to do that, and completely offline data that you might have unique access to as well. And then above that, we've got entity-based content optimization. So like I said, when you're analyzing that on page, really understanding the entity you're talking about, what entity is related to that, and how you might be able to mention those in content and what that looks like. So is it, like I said earlier, is it just a quick mention in the text, or is it a completely different piece of content that you need to link to? But really nailing down exactly what that is, how you need to structure that on your content. And like I said, SE Rankings Content Editor can help you to do that quite nicely as well. So I would recommend using it if you want to make your life a little bit easier. And then also on top of that, so we've looked at the semantic SEO, the topical maps. We've covered loads of different parts of our user journey. We're answering questions along the way. We're becoming really familiar to our audience. We are making sure that Google sees us as relevant for lots of different terms around the same topic, and semantically really, really powerful. And then we're looking at those entities and content, and we're really optimizing for those. And then on top of that is the information gain scores. So really understanding, okay, we've covered all this. Where's the differentiation? Where's the edge that we can get on our competitors? What aren't they saying that we could be saying about a specific topic? And how can we weave that into an existing piece of content or an existing topical map? So really understanding that is going to be key. And then topping that off with something like schema. So making sure that you're researching what types of schema you could be using and how that could be working with your content, and then looking at the sort of technical implementation of that as well. So this to me is a really powerful hierarchy for optimizing content. I've seen great results using it myself, and I'd recommend that you try it too as well. But then there's been a lot of things going on in search at the moment. So the helpful content update has rolled out, and I've seen a lot of backlash to do with it at the moment. So there's a couple of things I'm going to touch on in terms of that as well. So, like I said, that helpful content update started rolling out on the 14th of September. So we're 12 days in, but it's probably not too far away from being completely rolled out. And we've had confirmation from Google as well that it doesn't look like it's going to be rolled back. At least I think it might get refined a little bit, but John has confirmed that he doesn't really see us rolling it back. It's about trying to surface user first content. So there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of discussion that's going on around it, but it's something that I think we should really pay attention to if we're trying to succeed in search at the moment. And then I've also got a screenshot here, if you can read it from a recent tweet, if anyone's aware of sort of the ongoing trial with Google. So an ex-Googler has confirmed that they use click data in search. This, I think, is probably going to get a little bit taken out of context in terms of actually how they use click data, because a lot of people might think, oh, they use things like bounce rate. They probably don't. Bounce rate is probably a metric that is less useful from that perspective, but they have confirmed, or at least they've alluded to the fact that they're using click data or user behavior data in search to try and understand what to rank highly. So there's ways that we can try and measure that for our own sites, which I'll go through very, very shortly, to try and optimize for that. But these are a couple of things that we're seeing fairly new. But I thought this was quite a nice quote from John as well. So if you don't listen to your users, they won't be your users for much longer. So adjusting your content and adjusting the way that you frame and think about your content. So like I said, that really user-focused topical journey map for your users and for search engines is going to be really powerful. And I think with everything that we're seeing from the helpful content update, I think that's going to be even more powerful after that as well. But let's say we've got to a point where we've optimized all our content, we're really, really happy with where it's at. How do we then measure that? So I've kind of covered a little bit of that earlier on in the presentation, but there's a couple of things that I would recommend in terms of basic measurement methods, and then some sort of further as well that we'll go through in a sec. But things like traffic obviously is an easy metric to track using Search Console or GA4. So generally just seeing, okay, is it getting traffic from search? That's a good way of measuring it, which is quite basic, that everyone should be doing. Visibility, so you can track keyword performance, again, through SE ranking. So if you're starting to see keyword visibility improve, it's a good way of measuring the effectiveness of content. And then query counts, like I said, tracking those early signs of improvement through query counts and understanding what might be working and what might not, because that is probably going to come before visibility, which will then come before traffic. So understanding if you're doing the right thing with those early indicators from query counts can be a good way of making sure that you get an early sign as to what to do more of and what to do less of. So if you don't see those increase and you start to see them decrease, you probably want to start to refine the strategy. If you see them increase, then you want to really double down on that, so that can translate to visibility and then traffic. But then there's other things. So if you work in a business that is really commercial, they're going to want to know what revenue they drove through that content. And it's really difficult to do because it's very rare that you see content directly generating revenue. Usually it's more of an acquisition tool, like I said, or it's at least builds brand familiarity and builds that topical relevance. But you can look at direct revenue. You can also look at revenue generated where your content served as a landing page. And there's various other segments that you can use in GA4 where you can include your content as part of that journey to understand, actually, was there a touch point with my content before somebody went and converted? Because it's very unlikely you'll see revenue attributed to a certain page, content page, but you might see it played a part in the journey before somebody converted. So quite a nice way of looking at it, and quite palatable, I guess, to execs or seniors in a company that want to understand the value of their content. Like I said, you can acquire new referring domains from it as well, particularly if you start to, again, think about it from a user-centric point of view. So you can track the acquisition of new referring domains from that content. And then finally, the engagement metrics, which I've just given a bit more information on sort of how Google might use user behavior in search. This is quite relevant. So you can use a lot of engagement metrics such as pages per session. So are people staying with your site? Are they continuing to go through there? Scroll depth as well. They're quite a nice thing you can track in GA4 to see if people are coming down, like scrolling down your content, see if they're actually digesting everything. There are also other tools that you can use. There's actually one called Rocky. So it's Rocky with double E at the end, so ROCK.io. It's actually a widget that you can install on your site that gives users the chance to feedback directly on your content. So you can use that to really judge the satisfaction, because there's quite a lot of opportunity there for them to just give you every insight into how they feel about your content, and a really good way of optimizing for it as well. So it goes beyond just that click data and that anonymized data, or not anonymized, but it goes past that data that's just numbers, and it gives you the feeling from a user like what's useful to them, what's not, and you can start to use that again to prioritize content on your pages, to remove stuff that isn't relevant, and to help improve that user satisfaction, which could then improve sort of user behavior metrics, which then actually could improve rankings in search based on what we've heard recently from that recent trial. So a very, very good way of looking at it as well. So whilst, like I said, you've got the basic measurement methods like the traffic, visibility, and query counts, when we think about how this translates more into a business, revenue is obviously going to be something we're always measured against. Those referring domains will help us to improve rankings across keyword sets as well, particularly if you use that to distribute authority. And then, like I said, the engagement piece right at the end is where I think we're going a little bit more with search. So I think that's something we should start to double down on and start to try and get a head start with our competitors. And that's me. That's everything. So very, very short whistle stop tour of how to optimize content now. But yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you all find that useful. And yeah, if you have any questions, then please feel free to fire them over. And then yeah, we'll send the slides over afterwards.
Thank you, Alex. There's definitely a lot to unpack there, and you managed to fit it all in within like 30 minutes, basically. But every topic deserves its own webinar, I think. And I already have a question that came in almost as soon as we started. What type of content? Sorry, let me just bring it up on the screen. What type of content is winning in 2023 or 2024? Web articles, videos, blogs, and are blogs even are they still relevant?
I'm really glad this is the first question, because it gives me a chance to use my favorite phrase, which is it depends. It honestly depends on the query. So is it a query that warrants a video over an article? Is it a query that actually someone might want to read a piece of content around and needs something that's a bit more substantial and a bit more reference based than video? So I wouldn't say that blogs are irrelevant. I think blogs have gotten a bit of a bad rep over the last few years because people have used it to just spam out content. Realistically, a blog is just a content repository on a site, whatever you call it. You could call it insights, resources, guides, whatever you want to call it. It's still just a content repository. So I don't think they're irrelevant. I do think we should just be analysing queries and analysing topics, understanding what users actually want from those. So it might be actually they don't want content when they search for a specific topic. They want a video because it's easier to digest and it's a few seconds long. And like I said, it might be that you need something that's a bit more substantial for a different query. So yeah, always treat it query by query.
Yeah, so maybe next year the same question will have a different answer, but not yet, right? So it's still at the depends stage. We have another question. So I think you basically covered it. Some practices regarding the usage of GPT-4 and finding keywords from reports exported from SEO ranking. So just the easy answer is the content editor that Alex has already shown you guys. Unless you want to add something into there, Alex?
No, I think I'd keep it simple with that sort of thing. The content editor covers a lot that you would need it to. It's really, really powerful if you haven't used it before. So I'd recommend using that when you're optimizing content.
Yeah, so like the biggest difference is like all these ChatGPT, Bing, what's the other one? Bard, or so all of them provide you with content, but there's no way of understanding what the data is behind that content. And SEO ranking provides that data from the get-go. So you're welcome to not to just know what you won't just get help in the creation of the article from the AI, but the AI also points out which words must be used in order for the article to succeed on the SERP that you targeted, taking into account all the competition. Sorry, I wanted to get that plug out there a bit more. Great, thank you. We have another question about SEO entities. Let me click on that one here. So could you elaborate on common mistakes or misconceptions that businesses have regarding entity SEO? And the follow-up is, how can we avoid or rectify a situation to improve our content?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit in one of my slides, but it's understanding what entity relationships Google has in their knowledge graphs and what entities they see as related to each other, and understanding how they fit together and how content might be able to be created based on that. So it might be that you need a completely separate piece of content to cover a related entity to one that you're talking about in a post or in an article. It might be that you don't. It might be that you just need to mention it within the content because it's closely related, but it doesn't warrant its own topic. So I think a lot of businesses probably will go wrong in terms of creating loads of different thin pages, which I kind of showed an example of, where they've thought, actually this is related to the entity, so I'm going to spam all of these pages out on my site and create an absolute mess of content. But I think that's the biggest mistake people make, and it's understanding the nuance between the two. It does require just a bit of intuition, and I think it requires knowing the subject matter as well. So understanding a lot more about the subject matter rather than just research that you could pick up on Google. Particularly if it's like, I'll give the example of electric bikes. Like if you're writing content about that, you should really try and understand it and understand the topic and get to know product experts, and do deeper research into it to understand actually what those entities might need to be and how they might need to be structured in the content hierarchy.
Appreciate it. The next question is from Anastasia. Do you have any specific suggestions regarding the tools or approaches that have proven effective in enhancing the semantic relevancy and understanding of a piece of content?
Is it bad to mention SE ranking again for that? Because it does help to help you to find those relevant and related entities and related keywords and topical sort of help you to build those topical maps from keyword research tools. So I tend to use that quite a lot. So yeah, it's probably something that I'd recommend starting with. But also you might find that, like I said, you've got internal data where you've got other sort of topics that are related to your parent topic, because you get people ask quite a lot of different questions around them. So you can use that to start building more semantically relevant content too.
Thank you. We have an interesting question from Mikhailo. So will blog content satisfy search engines in terms of entity-based approach? So what I'm guessing is, like, if you just focus on covering the entity portion in your blog, no landing pages, no nothing else, is that enough?
I mean, it'll help. It depends. Again, it depends on what the entity is that you're trying to cover and the kind of queries that are around it. Because, like I said, blog content is kind of lumped as this informational piece of content, so it can help you in terms of if there are related entities that are that you can just provide more information on, that you don't really have to have a landing page for or a product page for. So blog content might help in that regard. But yeah, I feel like I said it a couple of times now, but it does depend on what you're trying to optimize towards, really.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is a part of the game. Everything depends. I actually have a question from my end when I was listening. And so in terms of the semantic SEO, you want to cover a topic as much as possible. And what does that mean? Does that mean covering a topic on a single article, or linking out to other sub-articles on your website just to cover all the small topics, like in 10 articles? And the follow-up to that would be, how does user intent fit into that? How would you satisfy the journey of the user, taking into account the fact that you want to cover, like, make every article sort of comprehensive on a topic?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. So yeah, it will be in some cases that you can create. There's sort of, it's almost again having a bit of intuition around the product and the subject and understanding, does this warrant its own piece, and is this something that I want? I think users will be searching for at different stages of their journey. So to me, it's less of a definitive answer, but it's more, yeah, if you've got the knowledge of the subject, the knowledge of, like I said, of the topic, you can get a bit of a feel for whether something warrants like 10 sub articles, like you said. Or whether it can be all contained within one article because it's really closely related to actually the topic you're talking about initially. So again, it's really difficult to sort of say, but it does, a lot of it comes with product knowledge, which is really hard to get and really hard to sort of optimize for, I guess, as a team. But it's something that I think a lot of people miss as well.
Yeah, I realize that a lot of the answers involve the competition, analyzing what they're doing, but at the same time, you want to take that risk and be different. So that's where you can sort of experiment on whatever idea you may have. Another question we have is from Connor. How could you delve a bit deeper into the information gain scores how they impact the prioritization of content topics and updates?
So I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but so the information gain scores, I'll share a link to, or I'll make sure a link is sent out to the pattern so you can have a bit more of a read about how they work and how they could be being used in search. I think that's probably the best answer for this question. So I don't quite understand the whole thing there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we have another question either way. So could you suggest ways for businesses to integrate the information gain score, I guess, into existing content optimization and SEO strategies to effectively boost the relevance and rankings? So basically, the question is about the information gain scores. Like, maybe you could say a paraphrase of what it's about, how you can leverage it to your advantage.
Yeah, so it's difficult to develop your own scoring system really with it. There are certain tools that I think have tried to develop their own scoring system for information gain. So you might be able to use some of those to find it. The best thing really to work out how that might work for your business is to start with a pattern. So just have a read of it and try to get an understanding as to how they use it and how they might be operating in search to understand how you can apply that to your content. The broad description of it is to try and make sure that you differentiate between what is actually being said around a certain topic and that you try and add extra value on top of that. But like I said, the actual scoring of it is a bit more in depth and probably would be, it would be hard for me to explain without someone having prior knowledge of the pattern as well.
Appreciate it, Alex. That is it for the questions at the moment. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and shoot them into the chat. In the meantime, let me just go through a couple of more slides that we have prepared for you guys. So in case you haven't tried SEO ranking yet, you have the opportunity to take advantage of the extended free trial. That gives you an opportunity to try out all the tools that we have that we are offering. So go ahead and scan that QR code or follow the link in the chat. Another slide that I wanted to show you guys is regarding the content editor. I realized that we only touched on it, but we do have a workshop that you can watch up on our channel that we just did recently that sort of covers the entire tool, and the offer is valid until at the end of this week. So you have to hurry up if you want to take advantage of the offer that gives you a 35% discount on the entire tool for 1 year. So yeah, but it goes the extra mile and not just writes content for you, but points out exactly the data, the SEO data that you have on the page, to make sure that it's good, that the content works for search engines and for the users. Yeah, so go ahead and jump on that offer if you're interested in creating content faster and quality content faster. Also, we encourage you to check out our community. Yeah, once you sign up to SEO ranking, I'll invite you to join our community where we have my colleagues and your peers are all there, and we just talk about all the new stuff that we put out. We have different giveaways. We just discuss different stuff in the SEO world, talk about SEO news. So basically, it's sort of an internal community for you guys to talk about SEO and SEO ranking. So you're welcome to join that as well. We also have an academy. So once you sign up to SEO ranking, you have the free access to a couple of courses, and we are working on other next courses. So the one is about SEO basics. If you're for example a business owner who wants to do everything on your own, this is the way to go, and you can go from SEO hero to from SEO zero to SEO hero. Yeah, and also about content, so that because this is what the event is all about, optimizing content. We have, sorry, if you can go back to the previous slide, I just want to talk about the content SEO course a bit more. So yeah, it just covers all the information that you need in order for your content to succeed. Well, but obviously what we covered today is very, very important as well. And the next is we also have a podcast out hosted by yours truly, and we have guests every month. So we've had, like, I think 10 episodes out already. Yeah, so it's up on the screen. We basically talk about a specific topic with different experts. You're welcome to let us know what maybe you would like to talk about, and us to talk about in the future. But yeah, so go ahead and check that out. Maybe you're on your way to work, as you're on your commute, you can check that out. And yeah, boost your SEO game, yeah, seamlessly. And yeah, finally, I want to thank everybody, including Alex, for taking the time out of his busy schedule to join us here and share all these amazing insights about content optimization, entities, semantic SEO, information gain score. For mentioning our content editor tool. I appreciate everything that you mentioned here, and also invite you guys to check out Clicky. If you have any need for their assistance, you're welcome to do that. And we'll also have a follow-up email where we'll cover everything. But in the meantime, join SEO Ranking's different communities. We have a YouTube channel where we have a lot of different webinars, workshops, how-to videos about our tools. You're welcome to explore all that data that we have, and just wishing everybody happy optimizing and high rankings. Thank you.